Namaste. We use this term death instinct more than death anxiety. And even more rarely, we use the term annihilation anxiety. To understand these terms in more detail from a psychoanalytic perspective, we have with us our guide and psychoanalysis consultant, Sri Himanshu Bai. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
So can we start off by understanding these three terms, death instinct, death anxiety, and annihilation anxiety?
Death anxiety is the easiest to understand. It is the anxiety one has related to death. It's biologically and psychologically grounded. It is instinctual. It has been recognized as one of the major elements in human mind for centuries. It is nothing new that psychology has found. The fact that every human being has two fundamental fears: the fear of death and the fear of pain. This has been recognized for ages. So this is what death anxiety is all about, the anxiety related to death. And obviously it can be just biological, that we don't survive any longer, and it is instinctual in us to feel anxious about death. Or it may also have to do with some psychological aspect, that we will no longer be here to enjoy and participate in the world where others are, or our attachments are being broken. Our desires, yet not fulfilled completely, are not allowing us to gracefully depart without anxiety. Also, we don't know what is there to be, the unknown that is in front of us. All this creates anxiety related to death. And this is what we call normally as death anxiety. And it's a very old concept that we all have two fundamental fears, the fear of death and the fear of pain. One part of it. Second is death instinct. Now, this is slightly different than death anxiety. This was postulated by Sigmund Freud. And what Sigmund Freud meant by death instinct were a variety of things. First, it is a metapsychological concept which is found in his third model of the mind, which is not usually called the third model of the mind, but it is. And there he postulated that there are two forces, the life force and the death force, which are governing the human mind, and the death force he called as death instinct. This death instinct, according to Freud, was responsible in the organism for his aging, for his dying, for the death of cells inside the body, and also for destructive element in man. The destruction in man related to somebody outside or even self-destruction. So destruction outside and destruction inside was also attributed to death instinct. So death instinct had manifestations in terms of: one, it was the principle underlying death; two, it was the principle underlying our aging and degradation; three, the third manifestation was related to destruction, outside and inside; fourth, related to masochism, the love of pain inflicted on oneself; and five, uh, uh, a yearning, a thirst deep inside of us to go back to the state of inertia, the state of matter from which we have come. Sixth, to resist any change wherever we are, in whatever equilibrium we are, to keep repeating the same thing over and over again. And seventh was If it cannot go anywhere else, it will come all on oneself. And therefore, Klein took a one more step about death instinct to say it has to be deflected outwards. And that deflection outwards causes aggression and destruction outside of us. So these are the ideas primarily of Freud, some element of Klein related to the death instinct. So it is more of a meta-psychological principle, a category variable under which so many things are covered. The movement towards death, the movement towards aging, movement towards repetition, movement towards inertia, masochism. Right? All these things are covered under the broad head of death instinct. And Freud did not use death anxiety so much he used the word death instinct. And the third is annihilation anxiety. That is slightly more difficult to define, because how do you separate death anxiety from annihilation anxiety? And here things get slightly more esoteric and mystical. The work on annihilation anxiety primarily comes from some people, notably Marvin Hurwitz, who has done very good work in the area of annihilation anxiety. And those who study object loss and abandonment in early childhood, they find this uh, variable more pervasively than others do. So how do we differentiate? Annihilation means ceasing to be. It is an absolute eraser of our existence. So it is an anxiety related to ceasing to be. Now, how is it different from dying? This ceasing to be. Suppose somebody believes in afterlife, reincarnation, or he believes in soul, then even though he would have death anxiety, he would not have annihilation anxiety, because he knows the soul is going to survive. Suppose somebody feels that I will not live, but my work will live in this world, I will be remembered in this world, my memory will not be erased. So we are not still looking at an absolute eraser of existence. My existence in memory of people, my existence in the work that I have done still continues. So there is no absolute eraser. But imagine a situation where you just cease to exist. Your body ceases to live, you die. Your soul also is completely destroyed. And anything related to your memory in this world is also destroyed. That is a real annihilation. Nothing is left out. It is an absolute eraser of your existence. And that creates a horrifying anxiety called the annihilation anxiety. And people respond differently. For example, if somebody is going to die for a cause, let us say for the sake of his country, he will have death anxiety, but he will never have annihilation anxiety, because he knows he will be remembered as a martyr. But a child which faces abandonment, or in some intense moments of an adult when he's completely lonely and empty, this horror of absolute eraser comes up, even though it is not a fact. In today's world, when we have put so much on social media, which is going to be there for a long time, it's not going to be erased. It will still come up in Google searches. My YouTube videos will still be on YouTube, even if I die. Yet, I may get into some states where I forget all of this, and the anxiety is as though I am going to undergo a complete cessation to exist, a complete and absolute eraser of my existence, past, present, and future all put together. And that gives rise to a much greater anxiety called the annihilation anxiety. Therefore, it is different than death anxiety. Death anxiety is only a small part of the larger annihilation anxiety. The anxiety of an absolute eraser of our existence.
That was really very clear and very crisp, sir. Thank you so much for the explanation. And my another question: how would all these three terms evolve in our discourse?
Uh,
How?
in pre-psychoanalytic times, death anxiety was very common. It is very strange that psychoanalysis keeps talking about anxiety right, left, and center. But one of the major sources of anxiety, which is death and pain, we don't call it as such. So in pre-psychoanalytic days, whenever somebody had some sort of fear or anxiety, it was natural for people to think that it has something to do related to death or pain, because these are the ultimate two fears all of us have. But after psychoanalysis, whenever somebody reported anxiety, we went back to some phenomena in the mind where the anxiety was generated. It may be Oedipus, it may be the split, it may be formation of an unhealthy self, it may be not good enough mothering, it may be not good enough container formation, it may be not good enough internalization of good, reliable, stable object, it may be not the closing of the split, it may be the unresolved, murderous, and torturous rage. So somehow, every school of psychoanalysis went back from from anxiety seen in the symptom to some of these basic causal phenomena. But they don't go there from to a further generic version to say it is ultimately, even in the Oedipus or even in the split open, the ultimate fear is of death, pain, or annihilation. And in the split open, often the fear is of annihilation. So in psychoanalysis, death anxiety, unfortunately, and also pain anxiety, the anxiety related to death and anxiety related to pain, that did not get much importance and theorization. And we started going from the symptom to the phenomena that we thought was causing the symptom, and we would just be in the phenomena. We would not go below that phenomena into the more elemental constituents of that phenomena. So we would not go into elemental constituents of the split open or the Oedipus. We would stop at that. So this going more elemental was not done by any founder of the psychoanalytic school, for a simple reason that that would call creation of a model of the mind which would be far more detailed, meticulous, and elemental, which none of them could create. So when we look at the discourse of psychoanalysis, we find death anxiety not so much used as it was before the psychoanalytic movement. Death instinct is being used pervasively by Freudians, post-Freudians, and Kleinians, but not all of them. Even there, you have groups which don't agree with the concept of death instinct. So within psychoanalysis, you don't find other schools except Freudian and Kleinian using death instinct. And even in these two schools, where we have a split, almost a half-half split. So half of the Freudian school, half of the Kleinian school, on an average to say, they use death instinct. So still compared to death anxiety, it is far more pervasively used concept. In explanation of pathogenesis, in doing therapy and healing, and also as a meta-psychological variable. When we look at annihilation anxiety, very few people actually even know about it in details. They may have heard the word, they may know a definition or a few lines about it. That's a different thing. But to really deeply know the concept, that is rare. I have not seen many people who are familiar or comfortable with this concept. So first is the ignorance itself. Second, very few people have actually gone in details in works of people who have worked on annihilation anxiety, most notably Marvin Hurwitz. And very few are able to differentiate between annihilation anxiety and death instinct. And even more difficult is the fact that what to do with it in therapy if you find it. So those things make annihilation anxiety even less used as a concept either in psychoanalytic discourse or in pathogenesis or in therapy or healing. So we have a hierarchy here. Death instinct most pervasively used out of the three, death anxiety at number two, and annihilation anxiety at number three. And in fact, death anxiety and annihilation anxiety are rarely used out of the three. I mean, they are all the three are not pervasive. I mean, death anxiety and annihilation anxiety are rarely used. Death instinct, as I said, relatively speaking, more used. But if you look at whole of psychoanalysis, I think all the three will come in the category of less used terms.
Yes, that's what. But so these concepts, these terms, or rather, these concepts are quite important, right? When you talk in terms of psychoanalysis, then why are they least used or
Uh,
less?
yeah, it's a good question because these are very good concepts, very strong concepts, very deep concepts, and very powerful concepts. And they play a very important role in the mind. So whether we talk of the working of the mind or the organism, or we talk about pathogenesis, or we talk about model of the mind, or we talk about therapy, technique, and healing, all the three concepts are very important in every area of psychoanalysis. However, they are less used because of certain reasons. One, uh, the discourse in psychoanalysis has moved from these deeper concepts more to affect and language in the last 25 years. So this movement more into affect and language has left these elements uh, not to be at the center of psychoanalytic discourse.
So,
Second,
what do you mean? Yeah, if you can explain in a little detail, effect and language. How? I mean, what do you
yeah,
mean by that?
yeah. So two important movements in psychoanalysis and derivatives out of psychoanalysis in the last 25 years has been, first is there is a movement towards focus on affect like anger, pain, guilt, shame, and so on, and less importance being placed in that frame on the psychoanalytic phenomena like Oedipus split open, formation of self, uh, the container, good enough mothering, and so on. And you can look at schools like ISTDP. You can look at schools like emotion-centered therapy. You can look at psychodrama based upon psychoanalysis. So this movement is into affect. And you can look at the whole area of what is called experiential dynamic therapy. So ISTDP, EDT, uh, ECD, emotion-centered therapy, right? Some forms of psychodrama, all of them, they go on the affect route. The second route taken is what is popularly known as a Lacanian school, where the focus is on language. The second movement in psychoanalysis went towards putting emphasis on the language. That is one part of it. Third element is uh, the kind of patients and the kind of therapists who are needed to do deeper understanding and deeper work related to these concepts are not easy to find. So Freud and his contemporaries, or Klein and her contemporaries, and their patients, neither of the parties is today easily available. So unless you have spent years into yourself and gone into the depth of yourself and these concepts and psychoanalytic knowledge, you cannot get a hold on concepts like death anxiety, death instinct, and annihilation anxiety. So one of the difficulties is the understanding of these terms and knowledge related to that. And the third element is related to training. That in training in psychoanalytic institutes also, these terms have gone out of favor. It's a few people like Andre Green and some others who continue to work on death instinct. So, and lastly, not lastly, but second lastly to say, psychoanalysis works at a particular level the best. If you put a continuum of uh, generic approach and a specific approach, 100% generic approach and 100% specific approach, in on the continuum in between there will be a zone where psychoanalysis works best because it works through interpretations, and interpretations work best in this particular zone. For example, if somebody has an Oedipal problem and somebody says, I have extraordinarily high fear of my boss. Now, one interpretation somebody can put it is, do you always feel the same anxiety related to all authority figures? So from a specific boss, we are getting into a generality, a more generic explanation of authority figures. Now, if you go more generic, you can also say, uh, do you fear that whenever your desire is not going to be met, you have this fear? Of course, it would be true. But the point is, at what point of this continuum, your tools work the best, and your tool is interpretation. And if your main tool is interpretation and it works at a particular level in this continuum, particular zone, the concepts that we are talking about are usually deeper than that zone. They are metapsychological concepts, partly metapsychological concepts. So this is fourth, why this is not in the center and so popular, because from a training point of view, with time getting squeezed, people don't have a luxury of free exploration. They are just busy teaching what works and what has been confirmed to work. And there, the whole focus is on the technique and remaining in that particular zone on this continuum. Right? You don't have the luxury to go out of the continuum and explore what happens on either side. And lastly, uh, psychoanalysis always has been deficient in case of tools for healing. So we still have the same old things of revisit, exploration, articulation, expression, articulation of desire, catharsis, the cognitive reworking, internalization of a good, reliable, stable object, making the unconscious conscious. But we have not developed any tools. We still are essentially in the free floating thing. And in ISTDP, we see a movement towards somewhat standardization, but even there, the deficiency of tools is still there. So one of the factors why these three concepts are not used so pervasively is we have not developed tools to deal with them. I think if we develop tools to deal with them, and then if we try to explain it to people along with the tools, the receptivity will be higher and the application will be higher.
ISTDP is too recent, so can be pardoned, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's too recent. Yeah. It can be pardoned.
It's too,
It has a long way to go, but it's
it
a
has
very,
a long way.
yeah, very promising technique, but still tools to be developed.
Yeah. You of course are able to get very good results out of ISTDP, is what
Yes,
I know.
yes. With both ISTDP informed therapy as well as ISTDP technique used in conjunction with the classical psychoanalytic technique, and that holistic basket, right, of approaches, that is giving much better results.
So you club everything together in your
Yeah.
therapy.
When to club, how to club, how much is
Is of
contextual.
course.
Yeah, it's contextual, but everything together is giving better results than any pure technique.
Mhm. So coming back to our topic, where do we find these concepts being operated in area of pathology?
Uh, Death anxiety you can find in anxiety disorders. You can find where you find catastrophic thinking, which is a wide range of anxiety disorders, phobia disorders. Uh, you can also see it in a large number of disorders where anxiety is a strong feature. Maybe in some autistic cases also. Maybe in nihilistic delusion also. Death instinct you can see wherever there is repetition, the obsessive compulsive range of disorders. Where there is destruction, anything that involves aggression, where there is self-harm, where there is masochism, the love of pain, where there is a will to die and get back to the state of inertia, which is depression. And depression has both the elements, the will to get back into an inert state. I'm talking about extreme depression, of course, and masochism. So this is where you find. You also find death instinct in operation in many of the addictions, where you see self-destruction through addiction. And annihilation anxiety you find in many cases of psychosis and many cases of personality disorders. But one has to dig deeper and bring in these terms to know if they are really operational or not. Because annihilation anxiety is a term which is less likely to come up from a patient ever. It's not an easy to coin term. It's not a term where you have certain experiences, you can easily catch this word and say, this word describes my experiences. So this is one of those areas where you will have to provide some knowledge to enable the patient to really name what he is feeling. And annihilation anxiety can also be found in some cases of autism, some cases of nihilistic delusion, some cases of persecution, and some cases of panic. So this is how we find all the three operating in pathology.
Annihilation anxiety, I think, is something I mean, the therapist need to derive, right? It is not something which can, you get it
Yeah, I mean,
in the very first time, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, this is where I have reservation about uh, not giving words to the patient. Many therapists say that.
Yeah.
But everyone is not a Freud. I mean, you can't discover everyone, you can't expect to discover these words. So, giving knowledge, giving words, giving proper explanations also is that cognitive part also is a part of therapy. You cannot have a non-cognitive therapy in 100% sense of the term. You cannot have, in this kind of cases at least, a therapy only in the words of the patient. There is no choice but to give words. And my experience is actually on the other side. Not only giving words helps, but at times even asking the person to read something helps. And this is not
Yes.
something new. The father of Indian psychoanalysis, Virendra Shekhar Bose, he used to do this. He
Mhm.
used to often ask people to read something before the next session. And that is often very important in India for people to really open up, own up, accept, and be ready for facing difficult parts of oneself. Say, for example, the Oedipus. Otherwise, you will spend months and years before you can even breach open the subject. Not
And more
to,
importantly, sir, I think when you hear, it is your perception and the person whom you are hearing's perception which comes. But when you're reading something, it is totally your perception. It
yeah.
is written there, and it's your how you take it.
And one instantly feels related to a community, connected to a community.
Yes,
But it is not a problem only I have. This is a problem thousands of people have. And that's a very
yes,
deep and profound rehabilitation for the person.
absolutely, yes. Otherwise, imagine explaining someone Freud's psychosexual stages, how difficult it would be, and someone just reading it would
Yeah.
be really easy. So, sir, how are these the issues healed in psychotherapy?
Um, all these issues need a great amount of reality acceptance and internalization of a very good, reliable, stable object and a very safe space. These three are very, very important for the type of exploration we are referring to. It is a long-term thing where you go from the leaves to the branches to the trunk to the root. Even though at the end of case history we may directly know what the roots are, it's very difficult to go straight to the roots in therapy. It becomes unbearable for most people. So we have to follow that long checkered path of going from leaves to the branches to the root to the trunk to the roots. And this involves uh, interpretation of free association, interpretation of dreams, through that to make unconscious conscious, revisit past events, integrate them, undergo catharsis of strong feelings, create more ego cohesion, internalize the good object, internalize the safe space, articulate one's desire, give words to those feelings which are half processed, and in the end be ready to be healthy and strong enough in the ego to be able to revisit that disintegration which happens in annihilation anxiety and in exploration of death instinct, or that mounting of anxiety which happens in exploration of death anxiety, and to undertake a very classical psychoanalytic deep, subtle, and long-term self-exploration and inner journey to be really able to heal it. This is one of those areas where intense short-term things are unlikely to work. It requires one to be peaceful, concentrated, clear, and slow and steadily going into the depth of oneself and taking time to understand and assimilate and integrate, and over a period of time be capable of integrating the difficulties of these concepts and if possible convert them into something positive which informs our idea of a good life. So it is a long drawn very classical, slow and steady, deep and esoteric psychoanalytic psychotherapy process.
Sir, how about spirituality? How does spirituality deal with this problems?
Uh, Before that, I'll just add one line to what I said in the last answer. Often these things come out in cases where there is a early life object loss. So that early life object loss has to be factored in most cases, and that we often call for a very supportive cohesion approach in the beginning before we get interpretative. Coming to the question that you have just asked, the spiritual part, spirituality deals with it in different ways. First, the understanding of these terms is in a different framework. The framework is different. For example, one school in spirituality believes in the concept of soul. And once you believe in the concept of soul, then the concept of annihilation anxiety goes out of the window. Once you believe in the concept of soul, then death instinct also does not remain uh, a pure dark evil. It also is in your interest that when you are done with this life, when there is nothing more that you can do in terms of fulfillment or progress, it is better to die and take a new birth than to continue with the same birth. So their death instinct becomes a part of a larger scheme of evolution. And therefore, it is not that it is only bringing an end to all the good things, it is actually bringing an end to an episode where the uh, promise of progress now is limited, and that end actually is the beginning of a new beginning. So death there is not seen as a pure evil or as a pure tragedy. Rather, it is seen as an end to a stagnated life where progress is not possible, so that we can make better progress in some other life. So that instinct itself is seen as a part of a larger positive scheme of evolution. And the manifestations of that instinct, even of masochism and repetition, are not seen purely from a unfortunate pathological standpoint, as though it is only a misfortune that has befallen us. Rather, it is seen from a karmic and self-journey point of view, that possibly from a karmic load standpoint and possibly from the soul journey standpoint, these experiences were necessary. And therefore, even the death instinct is at the service of the larger flow of evolution. And death anxiety is seen essentially as ignorance. That because we don't know the real nature of reality, we believe in death, which is actually an illusion, and therefore we are having anxiety for something for which we should not be having an anxiety. So death anxiety there also becomes like a phobia, where a really innocent entity has acquired the flavor of something terrifying because of a wrong schema in the mind. So this is one aspect of explanation. The second aspect of spirituality, how it deals with these three, is in terms of healing. That spirituality uses meditation, energy healing, herbal healing, idol therapy, rituals of certain types, certain psycho-spiritual processes to heal all these three. And in fact, in some of the Buddhist meditations, the disintegration of the ego and annihilation anxiety which is felt is not seen as something completely pathological, but as inevitable stations in the inner journey. In fact, these stations of annihilation anxiety and complete, not complete, but substantial disintegration of the ego are seen as those experiences which are very near to the completion of the spiritual processes. So these are actually a sort of states you get into only after certain attainments in the spiritual area. So they are also seen as confirmation of some attainments rather than as pure misfortune. And there are techniques of meditation, visualization, herbal preparations, energy healing, crystal healing, sound healing, and all other sorts of holistic healing practices which are used to address a person when he is passing through those states. And the internalization of a good, reliable, stable object in the form of a guru, God, mantra, existence, these internalizations, they help the person to uh, go through this inner journey far more comfortably and in safety, creating a safe space inside through these techniques, which is quite distinct from trying to access safe space only in the therapy room. Okay? You create a safe space inside. Okay? All this help, all this technique, this basket full of tools are used in spirituality to heal these three entities.
There's a vast difference how you address this three concepts, in psychotherapy and spirituality.
Yes, because the frameworks being different and spirituality being far more positive in that sense. The way we address and understand these three entities is very different.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your insight on this very rare subject, I would say. And we are lucky. We have few lucky ones who get to hear even psychoanalytically how these issues are addressed. And even with your spiritual knowledge and your vast, the techniques that you use, the spiritual techniques, we get to learn a lot from you. Thank you very much. And in this series, of course, our psychoanalysis and philosophy series, we discuss these three very rare subjects of annihilation anxiety, death instinct. And you know where you should write to, where you should write with your views, with your queries. Yes, it's the same address, hvindia@gmail.com. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.